This week on Waxing the Porpoise, G-Baby and the usual suspect Steve once again call upon fellow purveyor of the obscure and linguistic birtuoso Chris from Channel 83 as we stumble our way through the most recent updates to the Zodiac Killer case. Join us as we very quickly blow past any real substantive information on the recent Zodiac case updates in favor of obscure twister quotes and the enduring charisma of Bill Paxton, breaking down regional soft drink preferences, and finally get Chris to crack with the mere mention of the Glimmer Man. You ever go reverse ET? Ejecto, seato, cuz? Let's wax this wayward porpoise.
Chase, don't do that.
You see, we working on his brow chakra. We're just in back of the crown chakra.
Alrighty. Alright, welcome to Waxing the Porpoise. We're back again on episode 43 now. We're going to be covering the Zodiac case, but we're not going to be doing an entire rehash. This is kind of just focusing on some of the later developments that caught me by surprise the past couple years. I guess there's been a lot of shit that's gone down with the 340 cipher and supposed suspects that some people like a lot. I thought this would be an interesting one to kind of flash back to and stay away from the stuff that's been retread ad nauseum for years and years, but just kind of hone in on like the updates. Seem really interesting, particularly the code breaker group that's done all this work on actually cracking the ciphers. That shit's super interesting just by itself. But so yeah, this episode might be a little bit different format wise, a little bit more free flowing. Before we get into it, you got myself this evening, Jim G Baby.
You want to know how long I'm gonna stay here? 4 fucking years. How about that?
And as always, we have the usual suspect, Steve.
No, Grandma, I didn't get it. I'm so numb. I just hate him. I hate him. I hate him.
How's it going, man?
Good. Man, you always bring the good ones.
That one I couldn't believe. I was like, oh, dude, that one's perfect. Can't believe it took me 40 episodes to think of that one. And again, gracing us with his presence, we have, I don't know, like 9-time returning champion Chris from Channel 83.
Bearing powers of black magic from deep space.
How's it going, man?
Good. What was that?
Here, see if you can guess it one more time.
Bearing powers of black magic from deep space.
Star crystal? I don't know.
I pulled that. I haven't seen it before, but I pulled that from Extra.
Ah, yeah,
you're a big
that
fan.
makes sense.
That might be, like needle in a haystack. It was the most interesting line I found from like a trailer. I was like, maybe you'll guess it. What's that movie you just mentioned, Star Crystal? I remember, didn't you cover that with
Dan from TYTD Reviews? Yes, it's like it's like a reverse ET. It's one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen, and I admire it for its ambition of trying to be a reverse ET, but I think inherently that concept does not work.
I listened to the episode without seeing it or without any intention of seeing it. Probably never will, but I watched the trailer and that was pretty intense. I think that was like all I needed to get from it. Between that and you guys talking about it was pretty fun. So
yeah, I don't know if how deep you are into watching trash, but it's pretty low budget, obscure bullshit.
Speaking of trash, I just watched Gwen's Brace Yourself. I just watched The Running Man for the first time the other night.
Oh, nice.
That is the most 80s movie I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
Pretty 80s, but did you like it?
It was fine. I mean, it was entertaining for what it was. Arnold is just at his absolute worst, in my opinion, in that movie. Richard Dawson, surprisingly, with an absolute masterpiece performance. I thought he did a great job in that movie.
He pretty much played himself, though.
I only know him from Family
he is good.
Feud.
Yeah, he pretty much played that, like, just scum it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Always rubbed me the wrong way how he kisses everyone on the fucking lips.
It's
like
so weird.
Everyone's wife, and then even his son and shit. Like,
I didn't think he did it with the boys. I thought he just did it with the gals.
He did it with his son, dude. There's this clip. I don't know why I know this. His like son and daughter, his whole family like surprised him one episode, like it was his birthday or something. And I guess he never like celebrates it, or he's always busy doing shit. They came onto the show on air, surprised him. He's crying and shit. But yeah, his son, who looked like he was either between 22 and 35, did a full-on man lip-to-lip, face-to-face kiss. I was like, ew.
Like a Birdman, Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
And he would do it with like little girls too, like
we know.
10-year-old girls. It's so fucking weird in hindsight. I know it's been talked about.
I'm sure it was fucking weird at the time too.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never kissed my daughter on the lips, and I never will. Yeah, it feels wrong. Like, I can see little boys and their moms until a certain point, but even then, you got to draw a line in the sand somewhere. But, dude, have you guys ever heard of the fucking song Butterfly Kisses?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Maybe.
You've heard it. It's horrific. If you've ever been to a wedding with a gal who has like a weird close connection with her dad, they probably play it for the father-daughter dance.
Bonus points if they're like country.
It's so cheesy and just, oh man,
Butterfly
it's over the top.
Kisses.
It's like a Randy Travis.
You're not far off. Yeah, I think it's somebody even shittier. But
yeah, that came up because what was it? I think there's a horror like found footage type movie called Butterfly Kisses. Yeah, and like not relating to that song of not getting to kiss your daughter on the fucking face anymore or the lips anymore. It's actually a really good found footage horror, like a hidden gem. It's like legit scary and like actually really well done. But oh yeah, I found this guy in the garage. I wanted to revive him. I don't know if I showed you this, Chris.
He's taking out his.
I think you did.
Did I?
Or maybe you had it on one of your episodes where you're just showing Steve and playing the sound.
It was around like Halloween. I nerfed the on button, so I have to like take out the battery to get it to stop. But did you watch The Cormorant yet?
No. I was telling Steve off air that I had family in town over the weekend, so the only things I watched were Fast and Furious. I was putting that on in the background.
Oh, nice. Like the entire franchise, you just like before people start hurting each other, you just started with one and
well,
went
it's all
to
about
10.
family. If we learned anything from Fast and the Furious,
we only made it through the first three, but the third one's the best anyway. So,
is the third one Tokyo Drift or is that the second one?
Yeah,
you are correct, sir.
Tokyo
Drift.
I think that's where I gave up. I tapped out at Tokyo Drift
because you knew they would never make a better one.
Well, after. My favorites too.
There was like a 4-year break. Like that Tokyo Drift killed the franchise for like 5 years, so it makes sense.
Yeah. It was really bad. What's his face from Tool Time was in it? Zachary Ty Bryant.
Yeah.
Brad.
He sure was.
Does he play a bad guy? I can only assume.
Oh yeah.
He plays the high school jock that has driving his daddy's Viper.
Yeah. God,
it's the very beginning of the movie. It's the reason the main character gets sent to Japan to live with his dad. He's like drag races this jock kid, and they all get into an accident.
Yeah, he always plays little shits like that. He was a little shithead in First Kid. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He was also in a sci-fi original where he played Thor, and he did not work out for the role. Yeah, it was just his same like doughy toe-headed self.
Yeah, he does a very hateable face.
Yeah,
Dude, First Kid's dope.
After what's that? First Kid, fuck
dope.
yeah. Dude.
Is that the one where Sinbad is like a
presidential detail?
I haven't seen it, but I remember the commercials.
Oh man,
it's
good. Dude, that House Guest, that was like, and Jingle All the Way. That's like the holy trinity of Sinbad there in the mid-90s. That just fucking he was on a roll.
You ever seen The Cherokee Kid?
Oh yeah, with A. Martinez. Fuck yeah,
That's on my list of Western movies to watch this year.
dude. I remember there was like right then we had HBO for like a year or two, and I think it was when that came out. It was like 96 or 97 or 98, and I've watched the shit out of fucking some HBO that summer, and that was like a direct to HBO flick. It's actually really good. Like it's legit a good time. Yeah, but going back to the Fast and the Furious franchise after the second one and Tyrese's Ejecto seato cuz that's the pinnacle for me. So, okay. Well, transitioning from that to the Zodiac, or you said you had something else you wanted to preface with, Steve Dogg?
Yeah, this is something that I've been reading a little bit about, and I'm glad Chris is on for this one because I want you both to kind of put your conspiracy theory hat on. Not quite your full tinfoil hat, but yeah, it's just a couple interesting news stories that seem to overlap, and I'm curious to hear what you think about it. If anything, it could be nothing, but so are either of you familiar with the story of Anna Walsh? She's the woman who went missing in Connecticut over New Year's.
Is this like new, like this year?
Yeah. So a few weeks ago. So and everyone's looking at her husband. I think there's a couple reasons why it got popular in the news. Could have just been slow. She's like an attractive young mom with a bunch of kids.
Oh, is this the motherfucker where it's like sound bites of him and they're like, "Sir, why did you Google within 24 hours of your wife's disappearance, like how to stop a decomposing body?" And super incriminating shit. Okay, yeah. I've only seen little snippets like that. But god damn, is she out of his fucking league?
Yes. And I think that plays into why it's getting people's attention.
Yeah.
His crazy Google search history, which I've got some of the greatest hits list of. And also, when you hear the story, it just doesn't sound right. That's my opinion. And I'll take you through it just real quick. We don't have to get too far into the weeds.
Well, take your time. This Zodiac thing might not pan out, so we might need some pad here. So why don't you just go for it?
Okay. So Anna Walsh, she was last seen New Year's evening or the morning of New Year's. It's unclear whether it was before or after midnight. And so her husband goes to bed. And police are saying, this isn't what the husband says. Well, he says it also, but this is directly from the police. They say that shortly after midnight on New Year's Day, she took a ride share to Boston's Logan Airport for a flight to DC to attend to a work emergency, is how they describe it. So they lived outside of, I think they were in Connecticut, so Boston was the closest, whatever. So in the middle of the night, she flies from Boston down to DC to attend to a work emergency. She works for this company. She's a regional general manager of this real estate company that's called Tishman Speyer. Does that ring a bell to either one of you guys?
That does sound familiar.
They're a huge real estate investment development firm. Mm-hmm. I think they built the new Yankee Stadium, and they also just kind of buy up really expensive property all over the world. And so it's a
like
big
a BlackRock or something.
Yes, they're similar to them.
Okay.
So she works for them, and they're a big deal, right? So this was on the 1st. He never reports her missing. The head of security for her employer called their local police department on the 4th, January 4th, to request a welfare check, saying that, strange detail number one, her car was in Washington, which is unusual. I wonder if they mean it's a rental because she flew there, and that she was last seen days earlier. What does that mean? Was she seen in Washington, or does that mean she hadn't been seen since the New Year's party, which is what she attended with her husband, and there were some other friends there, and that this head of security, which it's also strange that the head of security would be the one calling police, in my opinion, not like her boss or like a friend that she works with. So they also say that when they contacted her husband, he hadn't filed a missing persons report. So, the wheels of the investigation start turning. Cops go to talk to her husband. His name's Brian. As you saw, he's a really dopey looking dude, and she's a pretty young lady. He says that he's just been kind of babysitting the kids the last few days, and the only place he went was, I think, a juice bar on New Year's Day, and then he took the kids to get ice cream on a different day. We'll find out later that the reason why he's been spending a lot of time at home is because he's on home confinement for a previous charge that we'll get into in a second. So they say, no, we have it on good authority that you went to the Home Depot and spent $450 on just cleaning supplies the day that she goes missing, which I don't know about you guys. I don't think I've ever spent that much on cleaning supplies in my entire life.
No, unless he's like fucking renovating a house or.
No.
Yeah. So initially they arrest him for misleading cops and lying about what he was doing, but they don't charge him with murder just yet. But what's interesting, to jump around a little bit, the reason he's on home confinement is he had been selling fake Andy Warhol paintings on eBay for tens of thousands of dollars. It sounds like he bought a couple legit ones and then had forgeries reproduced. So he might have had documentation for the originals that he was using to kind of bolster the fakes. So he's on home confinement, presumably with a GPS tracker, which is strange that they wouldn't have all of that information immediately. And if you look at the surveillance video or pictures that they released of him at Home Depot, whoever this person is at Home Depot is wearing surgical gloves and a mask, and you can't tell who it is at all. So if your spider senses are tingling a little bit, that's not necessarily definitive. So then they go to his house and they're searching around his house, and not on his computer, but on one of his kids' iPads, they find some troubling Google results where, if you have two minds of this, one would be this guy's just an idiot who thinks he's smart by using his kid's computer. On the other hand, the conspiratorial part of your brain might be thinking, if I was going to try to frame somebody for killing their wife, what types of things would I say I found on their Google search history, And I look up fucked up shit all the time, so I would probably have to answer some tough questions if somebody was to look through my stuff.
Yep.
But some of the things he searched for were how long before a body starts to smell, 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to, how long for someone to be missing to inherit, can you throw away body parts, can identification maybe be made on partial remains, dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body, how to clean blood from wooden floor, is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them, hacksaw, best tool to dismember. Like, these are so unambiguously obvious.
Pretty on the nose.
Yeah. Can you identify a body with broken teeth? What happens to hair on a dead body? Can baking soda make a body smell good? So they have this really troubling search history, and then they find in his basement blood and a damaged, blood-stained knife, which seems kind of unusual that this guy who is on GPS monitoring is somehow able to kill, dismember, and dispose of his wife's body. They haven't found any of her body parts, but he leaves a bloody knife in his basement.
Have they been able to identify that blood as being hers yet?
Not that I've seen.
Okay.
So yeah, he's at the same time the dumbest, most clumsy criminal ever, and also a mastermind that somehow thwarted being tracked with GPS the entire time. And I saw a report that they think that wherever he took his wife's body parts, they were incinerated. I don't know what kind of municipalities are burning their trash, but I don't think it's very common. So put a pin in that. There's a somewhat related story that's older that I hadn't heard get as much play, and this was in Washington D.C. I think like 6 or 7 months ago. There are these two guys named Haider Shel Ali and Aryan Taherzadeh. Okay, so they were arrested for impersonating federal agents with the Department of Homeland Security, and the way this all came to be is pretty funny. So they were living in this apartment complex that had a shit ton of other like government workers, like FBI, CIA, all of the alphabet boys and all of these government agencies, and they ingratiated themselves into these groups claiming that they worked for DHS and they were involved in the January 6th commission or whatever, and everybody's just like, oh yeah, okay. So
welcome aboard.
They never paid rent. And so people were asking the building managers, like, what the fuck is going on? They're like, we believe their story that they were government employees, which right off the bat is like, well, okay, that doesn't mean they get free rent everywhere. So that's strange. There's also reports that building management provided the duo with access to their surveillance system and codes to all their access controlled doors in the building. I guess thinking that if they're law enforcement, that they can help with security, or I don't fucking know what the rational explanation is for that. But these guys also were attempting to get in close with Secret Service agents specifically, and they started giving them all kinds of shit. Like they would take them out to dinner, buy them TVs, phones. They were giving them guns. They were giving them other apartments in this complex that they were also not paying for. And
the fuck?
At least one of the Secret Service agents that they were getting close to was on Jill Biden's personal security detail. So they're getting closer and closer to the inner circle of the government, right? And it's super weird because these other people that they're lying to, they're not dumb, you know, they're not lying to people in other industries. If you're like, oh, I work for DHS and we're doing the January 6th stuff or whatever, these other government employees might have questions like, oh, interesting, where are you working? You know, there would probably be follow-up questions that they're able to pass this, even if it's just a rudimentary sort of sniff test. So
yeah, this seems like incredibly fucking easy for them to do. Whereas like I've heard, you know, like stolen valor shit of people pretending to be, and like a dude who never got past like corporal, you know, or like a specialist in the army would grill a motherfucker of stolen valor and hit him within 30 seconds of like all kinds of acronyms and like really specific shit that even low people on the totem pole in the service they'd be like, oh yeah, that's clearly a fake. So hearing this is kind of blowing my mind because I've heard those kinds of things, and at this echelon of like specialized law enforcement, these guys are just like,
yeah, and it's in DC.
It's so weird.
Everybody all of these circles sort of overlap. So these FBI guys, they might know somebody in DHS, and they could you would think, go ask them like, hey, do you know these two whatever guys? They're flooding everyone with all these gifts, and they're clearly just trying to suck up to these people to get in their good graces. So eventually, they lived there for like a year and a half with no problem, and nobody knows what the fuck they were doing, like what they were actually doing. And so at one point, a neighbor, some nosy fucking do-gooder neighbor, happens to look through their window, and they see, I think, like suppressed, what they think are automatic weapons, you know, things that they don't think a random citizen should have. So they called Metro, the police department. So Metro shows up and they're looking at it, and these guys give them credentials, and Metro's like, okay, yeah, you guys are good, and leaves. Nothing comes of it.
Wow.
If they did check on it, well, so there's two possibilities at least. One, they didn't check, they just believed it at face value. Two, everything that we're being told now, how these guys are not actual agents of the state in any way, maybe that's a lie. And so they did check, and they're like, yeah, these guys are good to go. And now they're kind of just being disavowed by the powers that be.
Yeah.
So Metro PD, they leave. Nothing comes of it. These guys' fucking undoing comes at the hand of the mailman. So they were finally arrested because a mailman got assaulted in the building, and like an inspector for the post office came and were investigating it, and just something didn't smell right with these two guys, and they just didn't let it go, looked more into it. And these mail carriers, dude, they do not fuck around. And
I guess not.
Yeah, I guess they had identified themselves as members of the Department of Homeland Security's non-existent U.S. Special Police Investigation Unit. So
that sounds so generic and nebulous that it just might work.
It also kind of goes to show how bloated the state has become, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm part of the DHS's U.S. SPIU, or it's like, oh, okay, those are a lot of letters.
Yeah, so it's so fragmented and compartmentalized.
Yeah, and it finally rung a bell somewhere. So cops come in, arrest these guys, search the house. They find, I don't know if you could tell by their names, they're of some kind of Middle Eastern descent. I don't know what exactly. But they had both Pakistani and Iranian visas in their apartment. They found a binder that had information on residents of the complex, which included, tons of federal agents, people who are working with the White House, congressional aides, advisors, all this kind of shit. So now it's looking more and more like this is an international conspiracy. These guys are planted here for some sort of intelligence purposes, either at the behest of an enemy, or it could even be they are actually working for the government in some Like they could be like an internal affairs type of thing, like running checks on these guys to see if they're corruptible, whatever. Who knows?
And they got made, so then they have to burn them.
Yeah,
of their cover.
So they go
Harris
to court.
watches burn notice.
Yeah, they're kites. They're just going to get cut loose. So they go to court for, I think they were just charged with impersonating whatever. Federal judge ruled that they were not a flight risk. So he went ahead and approved them for home confinement before the trial ended up happening, which is insane because nobody knows who these guys are. They have passports for foreign countries, and that I think they might have even been in different names. I'm not sure. So the quote from this judge is a U.S. magistrate judge, Michael Harvey, signed the orders for the two men's release and called the DOJ's claims that the men were dangerous and compromised national security overblown, in quotes. Even though nobody knows who they are, they've weaseled their way into the inner circles of the Secret Service agent who's protecting the First Lady. And so then now everybody, because you're not going to get a lot of answers out of the government, right? They're just going to say it's an ongoing whatever and fuck right off and we'll tell you nothing and you'll like it. So then people are looking at the building.
3/4 of this is inaccurate.
Yeah. So they're looking at the building like, what the fuck is going on here? You were not collecting rent from these guys for 18 months. They were renting out other, penthouse, like luxury units, not paying. What the fuck is going on? Do you know more than what you're saying? And they're like, we don't know. So guess which company owns that building? Yep. Tishman Spear. And now it's been months now since that whole thing happened. But now the woman who was in charge of that building has been disappeared. So is it possible that this company is being run by some sort of foreign entity and she's there working in concert with these guys to make sure? Who knows? You could think of a lot of different scenarios where she knew too much and maybe had to be taken out or not, or it could be completely innocuous and she was just a regional manager for some real estate development firm who got killed by her husband and he is the worst criminal of all time. But
dude, I pulled up a picture. I'm going to share my screen real quick to show you guys what I'm looking at. But this guy looks really fucking smug.
Well, there was a lot made of, they were reading some of his Google search result because they had arrested him for interfering or obstructing or whatever it was. And then I think after they found his search history and the bloody knife in the basement, then they charged him with murder. So they were reading, it was at like some preliminary hearing or something. Yeah, look at that face. He was smiling when they were reading some of his Google search history, which seems like if I'm being framed and they're reading my Google search history, I might also be like, what the fuck is going on here,
Yeah. This face that he's giving, though, is pretty perplexing, though, because...
I mean,
what if fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing. What are these fucking shoes, though? On one of them, on the left one, if you look at it close, it looks it looks like
it looks like bags over his feet.
Okay.
Yeah, they're pulling him out of his house, and so they're bagging him, I guess.
Okay. I was like, dude, it looks like he was like cosplaying as like a fucking polar bear or something. And he's got like little polar bear booty Ugg things. Anyway, okay. That's a non-issue. But yeah, his facial expression, there's multiple of him. He's got a weird smile going on here. It looks like cool, calm, and collected.
He does have a checkered mental health history. I didn't bring up that because I just forgot. But I think he was diagnosed with something in his past. But, I mean, that could be planted information if you want to go the conspiratorial route, or it's just real and everything is as it appears, which who knows. But, yeah, Jim.
Did you also see, too, on January 6th, 2 days after the wife, Anna Walsh, was reported missing, there was a fire at their former home?
Yeah.
It's like that's just another... I don't have anything beyond that, but it began in the attic because of pipe damage, quote unquote. That's just like another wrinkle. Dude, there's so many threads to this thing, and it's
very weird.
It's only happened in the last 3 weeks. All of this shit has kind of octopused out from it.
Well, and if you're going to murder your wife, and you don't file a missing persons report, what makes more sense? Your wife being like, hey, I've got to go to DC. I'll be there for like a week. And you're like, all right, whatever. I'll just hang out here with the kids and sell fake paintings. Or if you're going to kill your wife and dump her body and then just sit there and wait for somebody else to report her missing, that's fucking weird.
Yeah. Unless it wasn't premeditated, if he just fucking freaked out and decided to murder her one night.
Yeah.
Then he's like, now what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
He should have Googled, what do I do now?
It's the only thing he didn't fucking Google.
Do I file a police report?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because on one hand, you could be like, oh, you know, I could see someone in the throes of like, you know, not knowing what to do or just being like super meticulous and just manic about like what to do. But you could also say, well, fuck, the laundry list of searches that you rattled off was like, those are like really specific and a lot of to where I can see this guy not being that thorough at the same time too. But I don't know I don't know what to make of this. This is like really blistering my fucking ball sack.
So there was one that I heard reported, but I didn't see it in print, where when they came to his house to ask him about his wife to get a description, he's like, oh, she's, 5'2", 115 pounds or whatever. And then they said they had one of his Google searches was like, how to dispose of a 115-pound female.
Oh, Christ.
It's just, it's just too on the nose, like you said.
Yeah, that's
or not. Or it's just he's an idiot. I mean, a lot of criminals are really dumb, and that's how they get themselves caught. But I mean, what was this emergency she had to go do in the middle of the night on New Year's Day?
Yeah, for real estate, like
because there's a lot of power in that building, So maybe somebody didn't like.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That tie, that connection.
Yeah, even if it's not some like a state-sponsored killing of this lady, maybe it was just somebody from one of these other agencies who's like, yeah, we don't really like that you allowed these two guys to come in and have free reign of all of our information. So I don't know.
Dude, I mean, this region's not a stranger to that kind of shit. We could probably do a whole series of episodes on just weird, like, within the nation's capital, like killings and, supposed, like, crazed killer that walks into Starbucks and kills 4 people, one of which happens to be, I think her name was, like, Marianne Mahoney or Caitlin Ann Mahoney or something like that. And then it turns out it's, like, shit, like no money was taken, like nothing, there was no robbery, and she was like double tapped assassination style, and like she had a bunch of crazy ties to like the power structure in Washington DC, and may have been fooling around with like Chandra Levy. She's kind of the same scenario. Like when she went missing, she was with that Gary Condit dude, having an affair with him, and he was on some like high level like appointed to a certain committee that had a lot of top secret type shit at his disposal. So yeah, we could spend a lot of time just on that. And it seems like add this one to the pile. I thought at the end, I looked at this, I thought you were going to say something else, because at the end it's like this investigation and media interest has invited comparisons to similar missing person cases, including that of Jennifer Farber Doulos, 50, the Connecticut mother of 5 who vanished in May 2019. So then, yeah, there's another one right there that's got some weird. And then that woman's estranged husband, Fotis Doulos, was under investigation for her murder when he died by suicide the following year in 2020. So,
Fotis Doulos. That's a fun name.
That is a fun name.
At the same time, though, it's like asking, have you ever noticed how many Chinese people get murdered in China? It's like, well, yeah, of course, like politicians and powerful people get murdered in DC because that's where they live. There's just a higher likelihood of that happening there.
Yeah, that's fair.
A lot of corruption.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's like it's kind of an old stereotype, but like with power comes corruption, and you're in the capital of power, so it stands to reason that it would be the capital of corruption as well.
Right. All right.
Well, I'm sure one day we'll have a full explanation of everything that happened, so you can take solace in that.
No. I want to hear it from your lips.
Okay. Well, that was a fun aside. I wasn't expecting that. That was pretty entertaining. I'm curious now to see where that goes. I want to dig into that a little bit further because that's fucking.
If Steve
pretty
gets
intense.
disappeared, we know where to start looking.
Yeah, you forgot to preface all that with supposedly.
Yeah.
Let's see here. All right. Well, so did that transition, or did you have a segue into this latest, like the Zodiac updates that we're here to talk about, or was that something just fun that you happened to catch in the midst?
That was just a little fun aside, sort of prompted by. I mean, there's really not a ton of meat on this bone of the new Zodiac cipher, and as much of a true crime fan and serial killer fan that I am, the Zodiac may have said that wrong. The
Who's
Zodiac
your favorite serial killer?
Zodiac has never really been that interesting to me. Maybe it's just because it's so old. Yeah, I don't know. It just never really grabbed me that much. It could be just because it's so old and unsolved that
unsolvable. Some might say.
Yeah, for sure. Like I don't know. I don't know. And it could be the unsolvable aspect of it where it's like, well, fuck. I mean, I don't know how much into this I'm willing to even invest my time if, like, I don't know. In the ciphers and the taunting of police, I like that. That's always fun. But the killings themselves are really just kind of ho-hum. You know, they're not anything too sensational, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And it's also
they all
kind
seem
of
very disconnected too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just never something that I really got into, but who knows?
Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you guys this. I think Jim had mentioned that at least you grew up in sort of this area.
Yeah.
Where a lot of, I don't know about you have probably spent time there, Steve.
Yeah. We both did. This is a little bit more on the western central coast, but I think we're both pretty familiar with the area. So not as much as one who would have lived like in that area, like within Sacramento, but like I know Vallejo and Vacaville pretty well.
Did you guys like in high school? You're like drinking at Lake Berryessa, and you're like, "Oh, that's where that happened," or is it? Did you like know of any of these locations, like where any of this stuff happened, or is it just kind of a mundane, like who gives a shit because you grew up with it?
I've been to Lake Berryessa. That's closer to like Santa Rosa and like Sonoma, Napa area, like wine country. Because I've had a lot of family in and around like Novato, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, which is like that's like if you're gonna go out to the lake and go have fun, you live in that area, you would go to like Lake Berryessa. But it wasn't until much later that I realized like, oh shit, that's where like the most brutal, arguably, of the Zodiac killings took place. And I've driven by Lake Herman Road, which is where the first set of killings was, which it's probably unrecognizable now. Or it is, because I've seen photos of like black and whites and it's just like dirt and like a basic ass road. Now you go there. I think the biggest thing, I think there's like a big oil refinery near there, and it's been built up and yeah,
I mean that makes sense because one of the things that he did was like intentionally kill people where like jurisdiction is kind of cloudy. So I had always imagined it would be pretty rural areas where most of this was going down.
That's an interesting thing. I've always thought was like if this was a truly singular Zodiac killer, it's pretty ingenious to have planned, if he did plan this, to kill the people where he did, where all those kind of counties that are pretty, I mean, at that time were somewhat backwoods, as opposed to like when he gets deeper and Paul Stein's murdered in downtown San Francisco. That's a different animal. But to have things kind of like between like Alameda and like Napa and Sonoma counties and Vallejo, I don't know what that county is, at like Contra Costa, something. It is pretty ingenious at that time. I wonder if he knew and did that on purpose is something I've thought about.
It seemed intentional, but yeah, I was just asking if, because, you know, I lived in Dallas for quite a while, and actually like to get on the highway, I had to pass the grassy knoll. Like, so I've driven by it hundreds, if not thousands of times. So it's just like, I was wondering if you guys kind of had the same feel about some of the stuff where it's like other people that aren't from there might be like, oh, that's cool. But for me, it's like, there's a fucking hill with grass on it.
Yeah.
Or like
So-
the Texas theater where they apprehended him, like they still show movies and bands play there. So it's not like, there's not really a whole lot of like local reverence for it.
Yeah. That's
So-
wild because I think that it would, because the JFK thing's like such a huge thing, and it was the president who was killed. Whereas like these Zodiacs, I mean, these are people that they're just regular people.
Yeah.
And the two spots like Blue Rock Springs Park, Lake Berryessa, and Lake Herman Road are all just, there's nothing remarkable about those places really. And even where Paul Stein, I think the last confirmed killed by Zodiac, I mean, that's just like a random downtown side street in San Francisco. Again, nothing remarkable. So I think it's like on the corner of Cherry Street in Washington.
That
sounds
right.
Fuck if I know where that's at, but it's not like Haight-Ashbury where people are getting stoned,
Right.
you know. That's got more cultural resonance than where I'd be interested. Like next time I am in San Francisco to like go by that area and just look at it. But yeah, I guess a long way to answer. I don't think that they're not like culturally like significant to us, or to me at least.
No, for me, I'm just kind of thinking about this now. It's like those areas are close enough to where I grew up to where you're sort of always hearing about it, but it's also far enough away where there's not like a personal connection for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, I mean, the Bay Area was a 90-minute drive from Sacramento, but it wasn't like my backyard or anything.
Yeah, and that whole metro area is probably like, I don't know, 10 million people now. If you're grouping in like San Jose, San Francisco, Oakland,
It's crazy.
all through
now.
the Delta, all in there. Yeah, it's fucking huge.
Good times.
They could stand to lose a few people, if you know what I mean.
Well, the rate people are getting out of California, fuck. What was I gonna say about all this?
Is this something that's interested you at all, Jim? Have you ever had a fascination with the Zodiac?
I wouldn't say fascination. It's kind of always been in the back of my mind, and I remember at a young age too, hearing about this. But then I think it was like 1990 or 92, somewhere in there. There was like a copycat, or there was a secondary Zodiac, like the New York one.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up getting caught, but I can't remember super clear. But I remember that like freaking me out, like just the name, that hard Z, like the Zodiac Killer, and he was this weird dude, and it was like you hear words like ritualistic and occult and shit like that, kind of like a second wave of like satanic panic kind of thing. I remember that sticking with me, and then it wasn't probably honestly till the movie Zodiac, which I think it rejuvenated the whole like the current zeitgeist of people that are into Zodiac and follow it and stuff. That definitely I mean, there's been some old dogs that have been studying this for a long time, but that definitely revived interest for sure. And it did for me too. And it wasn't until like years after that where now I'm like firmly in the camp of people who think that Robert Graysmith is like a shyster. And like,
that's one of the things I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Because like I'm pretty interested in it, but I think part of what interests me is all the stuff that goes on in the periphery, since there's like a Zodiac community and there's like this Robert Graysmith versus Michael Butterfield feud. That's like if you've ever been on like some random message board about like knitting or VCR repair and there's like fucking drama. Because I recently, not that long ago, read like this Michael Butterfield has some website that's like zodiackillerfacts.com. And there's some like long diatribe of him like, oh yeah, Robert Graysmith, he's a fucking liar, he's a piece of shit. Not in such strong language, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much roundly rejected now by the Zodiac community. I actually did get into, I think what it was around like 2015, maybe 2014, when I first started getting into like podcasts. I think I had rewatched Zodiac and got on a kick, and I fucking downloaded like a shit ton like way too many Zodiac podcast episodes and listened to them. And I found, so not only like, you know, Robert Graysmith is infamous now for writing like the definitive Zodiac book where he points the finger at Arthur Lee Allen. Yep. I even remember like my stepdad in like the early 90s saying like, oh yeah, they know who Zodiac is. Arthur Lee Allen killed him. I was like, oh, okay. And it's a weird thing that's not accepted. Like he was never officially called that, but, or named the killer. But when I rejuvenated, my interest in this by watching the movie, I found there's like this other, underground factions of people that you follow or don't follow. So it started with Robert Graysmith, and then like Michael Butterfield's a big name, big character in that. And there's another guy called, what's his name? Tom
like Voight.
Yeah, Tom Voight. Another dude named Mike Morford, I think, is, from an outsider's look at it, it looks like this Mike Morford guy is one of the more respectable, just like in the way he interacts with others that have conflicting ideas. He seems like the most, like the least dickhead out of all of them. And then there's a guy that's really interesting to me. His name's Thomas Howard Horan. And I've listened to a couple podcasts, Generation Y. I know you know that one, Steve.
Yeah, I hate those guys.
Yeah, they are pretty insufferable bastards, but they have a couple good good episodes.
I haven't heard it, but tell me how you really feel, Jim.
They had Mike Morford on first, and he went through a bunch of shit, and he knows his stuff. And then they had this Thomas Howard Horan on, and his whole thing is he thinks the Zodiac is a hoax. And he tells you why. Like, he thinks all of these are disconnected. He thinks there's like a greater police, specifically San Francisco police conspiracy to like drum up, like, whether it's just notoriety or funding or, you know, kind of pick one, that they were responsible, some in part with like coordinating some of the killings. And then also some of the letter writing. This guy, he's got a fucking hard on for an old SFPD cop named Hal Snook. If I never hear the name Hal Snook again, it'll be too soon with this guy. It's like, he's got a weird lisp too. So when he says Snook, it like kind of does something to me. But
What was
Boner alert!
Dude, the other morning I woke up and I just had that going on in my head. Like, what the fuck? I don't understand. But speaking of what you were just saying, what was the genesis behind, we used to say this to each other, fucking false flag? Like, where did we start? Why did we start saying that to each other? Like, just something in the news or something?
I don't know. I think it was back when I first found out about like Alex Jones, and I had watched Terror Storm for the first time, somewhere around there. But I don't know. I always thought that, like, you guys were kind of making fun of me because like that one time, like, I went on like a 2-week kick of Alex Jones.
I don't remember that.
Like 2008.
Huh.
I just watched Terror Storm and like blew my fucking balls.
I don't even know what that is.
It's one of his like documentary, like exposing the Illuminati, the elite, the inner cabal.
I just remember like some news story would happen and we'd be like, fucking false flag.
Yeah, I don't know what the inception point.
It might have been like Sandy Hook, Alex Jones era.
Yeah.
I don't remember for sure though.
Yeah, because I remember talking about like the Gulf of Tonkin and all that kind of shit, and I remember saying the word. Do you guys know what a false flag is?
Man, I'm trying to remember what it was called, but the first time I heard that was there was some like military exercise in Texas during when Obama was president, and people
was this around like 2015?
It was a while ago, and people were freaking the fuck out.
What was that called? It was called, I feel like it was like Spartan something, like 15, or there was some fucking thing. They were like marching through like Oklahoma to like the West Coast, and like a bunch of conspiracy heads were like, watch, FEMA's mobilizing. They're going to.
Yeah. It was that thing. I don't even fucking remember what it was.
I feel like it was around 2015, but maybe it was more like 2005. I don't even know how to search for that right now.
Yeah, that doesn't ring a bell to me.
It does. I remember seeing maps and like the conspiracy community like saying some shit, and it was like they're marching through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, all the way to Los Angeles. There's going to be martial law.
I was just like, I'm in fucking North Texas and I'm eating a Whataburger and drinking a Shiner, so I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
I've heard Shiner Bock's a good beer. I've never tried it yet, though.
It's decent. I usually, if I go Texas beer, I go Lone Star because I like to drink swill.
I thought that was fake. I never knew that was a real thing. Like, even in the first season of True Detective, I thought it was like that for like a rights thing. They like made up their own beer, like Lone Star.
Oh no, it's real, and it is. It's great. The thing I liked about it, they don't do this anymore, but on the bottles underneath the cap, they would have like I don't really know how to explain it, like a visual riddle. Like an example would be like a picture of an eye, a picture of a heart, and the letter U. Like I don't know how a visual riddle. I don't know.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Which are fun, especially when you're like drinking and everyone's like, "The fuck? Yeah, no, it's this, it's this."
I've heard also side tangent for on food and drink. Big Red.
I knew it. I knew you were going to bring that up.
Is that something that's close to your heart as a former Texan?
Well, I was never a Texan. I just lived there, but
okay. Well,
I don't like cream soda.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is.
I thought it was
wouldn't
just like
think so because it's
like
red,
bubble
but it's
gum.
cream soda.
Oh shit! I always thought it was like a code red kind of situation because it's so fucking red. It's like redder than the devil's dick.
There's also Big Blue, which I think is the same flavor, but it's blue.
It's just blue.
I thought.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. I thought Big Red tasted like bubble gum, but I can't really remember.
I've never had it.
Yeah, kind of.
We had a buddy who was his mom. I think he was from Texas, or his mom lived there, and he'd go back occasionally. And when it was getting closer, he'd be like, "Oh man, I can't wait to get back to Texas, get some Big Red and whatever the fuck else regional that he loved there." But yeah,
I didn't even know that was regional. I thought they had that everywhere.
It's not in California, that's for sure.
I've seen it. I've seen it in California.
Oh really?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say the regional soft drink in Texas is either Dr. Pepper, everyone loves that, or Topo Chico. Everyone freaks the fuck out of that, even though it's just like mineral water.
Sparkling water?
Yeah, it doesn't taste any different from any other sparkling mineral water.
It's kind of a trip being a California transplant to Indiana because you go to like a Meijer here, which is like a Target, a Midwestern Target, and their fucking soda aisle just dominates. It's like two
Faygo everywhere.
Fucking Faygo everywhere. I'd even take a Schweppes or a Nantucket Nectar. No, but they have Big Red everywhere. They have fucking this shit called cheer wine. Actually, I'm a pretty big fan of.
Yeah,
that shit's pretty tasty. It's like a cherry soft drink. Just like cherry is shit. It's pretty good. Almost kind of like grape soda hints. Man, we've gone off the res here.
What do you think was Zodiac's favorite soft drink?
I don't know. Just kind of like the Buddy Holly kind of like sketch of him. I always think like he'd be like a root beer guy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like
that high and tight.
Yeah.
Horn rim glasses.
Yep. What was it? Oh, I was talking about the factions. This dude, Thomas Howard Horn. Yeah, he's kind of like a black sheep of this new like of the recognizable names that are doing a lot of research and shit, because he thinks that all of this is a hoax perpetrated mainly by the SFPD, but also like shared between the different departments. Like, hey, this makes us look really fucking bad. I don't know. All of his
doesn't it
theories.
make you look even worse if there's a serial killer on the loose writing letters to the paper and threatening to blow up school buses and you never catch him?
Yeah, that's a good point. But either way, he thinks that for whatever reason they were trying to point it to one person as one perpetrator, where he has like a ton of evidence and things that he points at that these were just crimes that fucking happened, and that even I think he even makes a leap that like the letters aren't connected to the killings, and this is just like hype or uh, something that whoever wrote them did to like get off on a personal level, maybe. That's the other thing about all this Zodiac stuff. As I was starting to look at it, it's pretty overwhelming because it's been fucking 50, 60 years, and there's been this newly heightened interest in it like crazy, and it seems to just be ramping up, year over year since that point. So like what, 2008, whenever Zodiac came out, and so it's spawned
5.
Okay. Damn, I thought it was like 2007, but it's spawned, like now there's these like 4 or 5 so-called like authorities, and it's funny, they all have like the same fucking websites. Like one's zodiackiller.net, one's like zodiackiller.site or site.com. The other one you mentioned of
ZodiacKillerFacts.com.
Yeah, Zodiac Killer Facts. So
yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the problems with going back to something Steve was saying, is saying you were saying you weren't not very interested because it hasn't been solved and is possibly unsolvable. That's one of the reasons I am so interested in it. But also, whenever you have something like that, it attracts grifters, which probably, at least, I don't know anything about these guys, but
they all have books.
You can probably say that they may have good motivations, but they're also looking to make a buck.
Oh yeah. So it behooves them to, like, I mean, some of them, like, this is my favorite suspect right now. It's William McDuff Andrew. And whereas like 7 years ago, he's like, this is the definitive. It's, Robert Pikowski or whoever, like, this is who it is and this is why. So it actually behooves them for this to keep just stringing out longer and longer, and just crumbs to come out and make a new case for this is what I think. Or
because it was a year or two ago, they came out and were like, we know who it is, we got him,
right? And
I kind of just accepted that and moved on. And when I was researching this again, I looked back into that to see if there was any follow-up, and it's like, yeah, we don't think that's him. Like,
yeah, on his face, I think that are you talking this is Gary Francis Post?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, from what my cursory research on like the newest updates within the last 2 years was, so 2 years ago they broke the 340 cipher, 18 months ago, 2 years.
Yeah.
And then a year after, they broke the 2 smaller ciphers. I can't remember what the fuck they're called. It's like cipher 75 or 72. It's the one where they speculated for a long time. It's like, this has to be his name because it's so short, like that he hit his name. And so once they broke this 340 cipher, they did a couple variations, but they took like the primer for what they were able to use to crack the 340 cipher and applied it. I don't know if like some new information came about this Gary Francis Post guy, but I think they reverse engineered it. So they were like, okay, let's try this guy's name and see if it fits within the cipher. And it did. And so that's when they were like, oh, well, shit, what are the chances of that? Like, it has to be this guy. But then I've seen stuff since that point where the circumstantial evidence and some of the other things associated with Gary Francis Post don't line up. And so there's, 3 or 4 other suspects that are better than him in some aspects. But what the Gary Francis Post claim is that it's involved with this cipher that took 40 or 50 years to get broken. So that gives it a lot of credence in that direction. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I saw something similar where it's like, oh, if you remove his name from one of these ciphers, it makes more sense. But they never actually provided that information. And they also alluded to like, oh, and his daughter or whatever told us this information that he had this thing, but they never followed up like, yeah, and the police came to check it out and they tested it, and it was like, we've got all this information, but we're not gonna like tell you exactly what it is.
I think the other thing in all of this too is I've heard thrown around like there's some kind of DNA that they're hoping to test, or that's been like really hard to try to test against the little amount of DNA that they have on like the Paul Stein crime scene, which is the one that produced like all the blood and the torn articles of clothing and stuff. But yeah, regardless of what happens, and especially as the years go by, like the DNA aspect and like anything physical like that outside of circumstantial evidence is, I mean, that's the only case you could make at this point would be circumstantial.
I mean, the thing is though, like they just don't have any confirmed DNA, because if you want to go for like the biggest date range, this guy was active from 62 to like 78. I think that like they first identified like double helix DNA in like 1953 or 56. So none of the evidence in this case was handled with the foresight of like even knowing that DNA could ever be used. So it's all, you know, if they say they have a latent fingerprint, like that could be anyone. If they have a hair sample or saliva, like someone at the San Francisco Chronicle could have fucking sneezed on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I saw another thing too that they said threw a wrench into all this was the practice of reusing stamps, I guess, during this time period in the 60s and like through the late 70s was pretty common. And so that can give you a lot of false positives or just be another thing to, you would think would be helpful, but it's just really not.
Yeah, and going back to the smaller ciphers, I think one is like 13 characters and one is 32.
Okay.
That's just too small of a sample size to ever say you have a definitive solution to it.
Right, because when they broke the 340, people were excited, like, oh, they've done that. They'll be able to crack these next two, you know, like no problem. And then they were explaining how it's like, actually, that's fucking exponentially harder because you have less to work with and try to figure with.
You just can't. If there's 13 characters, there's so many possible solutions to it.
Yeah, that shit's wild. I did watch one of the main guys behind the 340 cipher. His name's David Uranchak. And just hearing like him and I think two other dudes, one was like a software guy, one's like a big coder guy, and then another dude's like involved in this same kind of professional world, and they all put their heads together and ran through all these different iterations and learning about all that shit. That this is stuff that's happened within the last 2 years was all pretty interesting.
If anybody's interested, because it was solved by three guys who kind of just met by happenstance online. One was like a Belgian guy, I think. One was an Australian, and one was an American. I think the Australian guy's name's Sam Blake.
Yeah.
He put out a super long, really like math heavy article explaining the like the programming that went into solving it, and it fucking, my mind shut off when I was trying to read it. But it's all out there if you really want to look into it.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and there's a couple YouTube clips that like really break it down pretty good. I think it's like the Infographics Show is the channel. I watch some of their stuff every once in a while. It's kind of cool to turn your brain off. It's all visual, and they do a good job at hitting you with like a 10 to 15 minute kind of Cliff's notes on stuff like this.
Well, yeah, and understanding this particular cipher, it's very helpful to see it visually. Like I was trying to think of how to describe just in an audio medium, you know, how they went like down two and then over one and then down, you know.
Yeah, and
it would help.
And all that shit.
It would help quite a bit to see it.
Gotta break out my high school algebra and talk about rise and run.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah.
I hated that shit.
Yeah, it's like a homophonic substitution cipher that, as Steve said, it starts at like the top left corner, goes down X, goes over Y. I think I just fucked up the axes, but you guys know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, one thing, having no knowledge of this world at all, there's two different types of ciphers that they can use. One is a homophonic substitution where one letter might be swapped for another one or a symbol, and transposition in which letters are reordered in a different way. And this was a combination of the two. So the symbols and letters represented other things, and then they also changed the order, which I guess there's a lot of software that you can just plug it in, and if it's just homophonic, it'll run it and be like, oh yeah, this is this and this is that. And when they've run it, they're like, nope, we don't know what this is. So they had to do like a second level analysis. And yeah, that's where these three guys came together. And
Yeah, because the first one, like the 408 or whatever it was solved pretty quickly by just a school teacher and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one he sent, which was the 340, he did a more complicated cipher, which is why it took so long to crack.
Which is pretty intense. Fucking 51 years. I also, as a quick aside too, I saw that on one of these, these new faction of Zodiac followers, and on a message board that I guess it's a somewhat common conspiracy within this greater conspiracy, is something about like those two school teachers, or the school teacher and his wife. I can't remember their name, Don and Betty Hansen or something like that.
Harden.
I knew it was an H. That they're involved somehow, or like they were the ones, because it was, I think the first cipher was solved in like 12 hours or 16 hours or some shit like that. That they point the finger at them. I started going down that rabbit hole, and I was like, what am I doing with my life right now?
Keeping in mind that Robert Graysmith's credibility is possibly called into mind. One of the things in his book that he said that he discovered was that the substitution cipher used in the 408 cipher was just lifted directly from a book, like an introductory cryptographical book. And the way that they solved it, even though they didn't have any background in this, was the way that you would solve something, which is using something called cribs, which is where you like infer a word that would be in the text based on the context. And they were like, he's probably going to start this letter with I, because he's a narcissistic serial killer, and somewhere in it there's going to be the word kill.
So looking for doubles.
Yeah, they started looking for doubles to find that double L, and they assumed the first letter of the cipher was I, and just worked backwards from there. So I mean, it's not something that's super sophisticated. If they hadn't cracked it, certainly someone else would have.
Right.
Yeah, so I wonder if it is like a false flag and these teachers solved it. If the teacher solved it super fast, the cops went back to him like, hey, can you make us one like this, but make it way better, please?
Yeah.
This is getting into like the Sasquatch as an interdimensional being level of conspiracy theory.
Yeah. It's just gone down an extra layer.
Or they could have even been unknowing participants if the cops came to them and said like, hey, what would be a really tough cryptograph to like what would be if you were trying to make one that was unsolvable, what would you do? And they could have been like, I don't know, I would have combined these two different types and maybe done it like this. And
to throw off
they
like
just took that info back, and who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point. Look at the big brain on Brad. That's a good point. One thing I thought was interesting. So since like I this is just a quick laundry list. Since like 2014, these 4 or 5 people have come up as possible. And they were kind of like the flavor of the month, like this is the Zodiac, until like 2 years later they're like, oh, okay, we think it's this guy for sure. So it's been more recently Gary Francis Post, Earl Van Best Jr. Does that name ring any bells? I remember that one kind of in the cultural lexicon being thrown around. That was like a gal, it was her, a guy or a gal, it was their estranged father that they they
found some shit in an attic or something like that.
Yeah, they were like retrace the steps to find out who their dad was, and they found some like weird shit, some incriminating stuff, and they were like, oh, and then people kind of jumped onto that bandwagon. We're like, oh, he could be the Zodiac. And another dude named Guyward, Guyward, Guyward Hendrickson, Jack Terrence, Ross Sullivan, Ed Edwards.
Yeah, he's fucking lashing out at his parents for fucking naming him Guyward.
Yeah, that's never heard that one before. I thought Wayman Tisdale had it bad. I guess question 2, since the Zodiac movie I think probably kicked off for all three of us a heightened interest in this. What do you guys think of that movie in general? Did you
Top
like it?
10. Love it.
Hell yeah. Steve Dog?
I'm not even sure if I saw it all the way through. I mean,
No.
it's been
How dare
discussed.
you.
It's been discussed on the show a couple times where
Yeah.
it's one of the hardest times I've ever laughed. One of my roommates had to freak out post watching that movie. But I don't think I saw it all the way through.
It's good. It is long, and I feel like you can feel the length of this one at 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I don't think it overstays its welcome. This is one I like to flash back every couple of years to it.
I used to watch it constantly, and I was just talking to my significant other about this, and she's like, remember when you used to watch that all the time? I was like, yeah, until someone, meaning her, told me I couldn't watch it every week. I mean, really the only thing, the only knock I have against that movie is just a function that it's based on a true story, is that there's really no resolution.
Right.
So it kind of, you watch it for like 2.5 hours and it peters out.
They really want to fucking make it seem that way, though, at the end of this movie. Not only with like that interview where it makes it pretty clear, like, oh yeah, for sure. But then they put the cherry on top at the end with old Mike Mageau coming in and saying, oh yeah, that was him. Like 15 years later, and he's like strung out and just wants to get the fuck out of there and get paid. But yeah, this is one that do you put this in your so-called holy trinity of Mark Ruffalo and Files, or is this kind of on the periphery of that? Okay,
it is, because even though he's tangentially related to the Files, even though he's not the one really looking through them in this one.
You follow him and Anthony Edwards pretty, like, you're gumshoeing it up with them for a good chunk, which that's probably one of my more favorite parts. Like them, following them around, cruising around, and then also like Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr. palling around. Yeah,
and that's one of the things when I was talking about like the stuff on the periphery is more interesting, is like, I don't know if you guys ever heard that there was a Zodiac letter in like 1978 that they got, that a lot of people thought was written by Dave Toschi.
Yeah, and that's what kind of tarnished his before that kind of unstained reputation, and like.
Yeah, and they also like based the character Bullet from the Steve McQueen movie off of this guy.
Right. I remember they throw that in the movie where, what's his face? Gyllenhaal looks at him and he thinks he's so cool because he's got like that understrap, like gun holster, like under, where you put the thing on, like Danny Gloves has in the Lethal Weapon fucking series. So that's another point in in that favor. He wears that Bullet Dave Toschi style, which I always thought that's fucking cool, man. I always liked that when they put on that like understrap thing.
Yeah, it's weird to think that was like a signature style for this dude, because that's like a pretty, I mean, I used to have one of those when I had a 1911, but that's like a pretty standard type of holster to buy these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seemed like, at least the way they portrayed Toschi in the movie, he didn't really give me like badass vibes. He seemed more of like,
he wore a fucking bow tie for one thing.
Yeah, that was a huge knock against him. But Ruffalo being Ruffalo was able to like transcend that. But yeah, he just seemed more of like an investigative, like a Columbo kind of guy, minus the charisma.
For sure. And one of the things I talked about on like not the very first, but the first Channel 83 podcast I did with my friend that didn't end up actually airing was like, yeah, 2 out of the 3 people in this have been in the MCU, so we gotta wait for Jake Gyllenhaal, and then we'll have the trifecta. And since then, he has been in
Mysterio.
One of them. Yeah, but I guess if you are of such and such high profile, you will eventually be in an MCU movie. Unfortunately,
it's like
or fortunately for you, because you get paid tens of millions of dollars to stand in front of a green screen.
Yeah, you're getting fucking cheesed up.
I don't think I've seen a single,
John Kenyon would say.
I don't think I've seen a single MCU movie.
The only one I've seen willingly was Iron Man when it came out, and I liked
first
that.
Iron Man's pretty good,
but I fucking hate everything since then.
Damn. So you need to check out Zodiac, dude. It's a good flick. It's by David Fincher, the dude who did Fight Club, Seven. So it's got that going for it. Yeah, it's a really good flick.
I almost watched Nightcrawler.
You should.
Good
last
one.
night, but
Very good.
time got a little short on me, so it's on my list.
It's a weird one. It's like I didn't know what to expect going into it, but it almost has kind of like a horror kind of vibe. It's
All right, that's enough. I'm gonna watch it.
It's good. Gyllenhaal's great in it.
Yeah.
Paxton's great.
Yeah, it kind of caught me by surprise, like a lot. Me and my wife really enjoyed that one. But yeah, you should watch Zodiac, man. Fuck, it's it's one of my faves too, and it presupposes that Robert Graysmith was just like this was the definitive guide, and I mean, I think he did have some clashes. Fincher did, and he put his own stamp on a couple things, but for the most part, he kind of follows that book. I don't know what the name of the book is.
It's just called Zodiac.
Okay. It's like the definitive. And I come to learn like later on, I think after it was written, there was actually law enforcement that used it as a reference and like a main kind of guide to navigating the investigation, which is kind of weird to think about. But another side question too, related to this. What's your opinion of Fincher's Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? Are you a fan of that, Chris?
I think we've talked about this before. I've never seen it.
Fuck. Yeah, if you like Zodiac, I think you'd dig it. It's real good. Have you ever seen that one, Steve? It's kind of a shot in the dark. Probably not.
I think I have. It's been a long time.
If you're a fan of Zodiac, just like on a pure, like outside of the Zodiac, but just that film in general, I think you would dig The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I like that one a lot. That one's got a good rewatchability. It's another 2.5 hour kind of venture, and it's definitely Fincher style, and it's great. I don't think it gets enough love. Do you have anything else on like in terms of like anything recent beyond the 340 cipher on this case, Steve?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It's so funny because me and Jim were talking on Instagram. I thought we were going to be recording this on Saturday, and he's just like, no, Thursday, but don't worry. Steve knows his Zodiac stuff. And you're just like, I don't fucking care about this. He led off with like, this is not interesting to me.
Yeah, it was a wild assumption, pretty much. I just wanted to record. I didn't want to have to wait till Saturday and move stuff around. So that,
for you,
that was
the
an
action
assumption.
is the juice.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of whiffed on that one there.
No, I don't think so. I think
the only thing that really came from this is that if the solution is correct, which I'm not a cryptographer, I don't have the credentials to say, no, you guys are fucking wrong. So let's just accept that it is. There was an incident that is portrayed in the movie Zodiac where someone claiming to be the Zodiac Killer called into, I don't remember what show it was, but it was some talk show. And they also had this lawyer, Melvin Belli, who I guess was like the 60s Johnny Cochran. He was just like a lawyer that was nationally known here in the U.S. The only thing that came from this cipher solution is that was not him, because that's what the solution says. Like, I wasn't calling. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber.
Yeah, Jim Dunbar.
I liked Brian Cox in that role of Melvin Belli. I liked him a lot.
Yeah,
I don't know if
he's a good guy.
I don't know if he captured like the essence of the real life, but I thought he was good in the movie for his part.
Yeah, and one thing, not to circle back too much, the first cipher that they discovered when I was doing a little research, it ends with a sort of nonsensical string of letters.
Yeah, they were never able to plug in.
Yeah, weird.
A lot of people speculate that it's like an anagram for his identity, but more likely it's just junk letters thrown in there to make the solution more difficult.
Lewis Friend. Fool's gold.
One of them was like such and such the hippie, was someone was saying. That's what it stood for.
I want a window. I want to see a tree.
But yeah, I've fucking listened to Robert Graysmith's book quite a few times. That's one of the, I used to fucking listen to that to go to sleep.
Oh,
There's
wow.
One story that my significant other likes to tell is we were camping in Durango, Texas, or Durango, Colorado, rather, and it's just like pitch black outside, and I get a campfire going, and I'm like, yeah, let's listen to Zodiac on the iPod. And there's like some fucking family of like a husband, a wife, and like an 8-year-old kid and a 10-year-old kid in the cabin next to us. They're probably like, what the fuck is this?
These fucking creeps.
This guy's gonna kill us.
Just trying to grill my Hebrew nationals and listen to Zodiac.
Oh boy. Yeah, this one, it's so interesting, and then when you get into it, it's like, first of all, it seems like you have to kind of subscribe to one of these factions, whether it's like Michael Butterfield, this Mike Morford guy, the Thomas Howard Horan. I know I listened to a couple, and the more I listen to Thomas Howard Horan, who's also a professor of English, he's charismatic is probably not the right word, but like the way he speaks about it and his passion and kind of seemingly no nonsense approach to, and his theory that the Zodiac case is a hoax, and he's like, there's much better suspects for, the Lake Herman Road shooting, and there's these 3 people. He's kind of like, he's looked through like 11,000 pages of like police reports, like shittily like Xeroxed copies from different departments that he's like pieced together and magnified and tried to improve, and just he's gone through all those things and he's come up with this theory. But then he was on with this guy, Generation Y, I think, also facilitated this. They brought him and Mike Morford on, and they talked, and it was like a fucking 3-hour podcast. And the Thomas Howard Horan guy, he kind of backslid a lot, and I don't know if he's just like an agreeable person or that's how he was on the interview, but the Mike Morford guy, who's very much this is one person, a singular Zodiac who did it, and I can't remember who I think it was Ross Sullivan maybe, or Richard Gaikowski was his guy that he was, his horse that he was riding at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this Horn guy just totally kind of like gave a lot of ground to him, which I thought was kind of weird. So I didn't know what to think. But yeah, especially since the proliferation, I guess there was a big FOIA case like that one individual paid a lot of money for and didn't really do anything with, and it just kind of like, here you go. And so and that comprises like, those 11,000 documents. They're all out there. You can go look through them. And so I guess that part's pretty interesting that some of these people have taken it upon themselves to like actually go through it, whether they're in it for the money. And they're all writing books about this. That's the other thing. You look up how many books have been written in the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. It's like, which one do you pick? And like, it's like your mind can't handle that many different possibilities and theories. And it's a case that's fucking 60 years old, your brain can only make room for enough. But
yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because you guys are more into true crime, I think, than I am. But don't you think that it was a conspiracy by the police is just a convenient excuse that gets thrown around a lot? Because I've also heard the exact same thing in regards to like the Atlanta child murders and other things, where it's like, this city has a crime problem. The media picks up on it and they start saying it's a serial killer. And then the police just sort of railroad some guy to say, hey, we're doing something about it.
Yeah, that makes sense in that instance for sure, the Atlanta child murders. But like this one, it's weird because it's still an ongoing investigation to like the San Francisco PD. And, they haven't tried to bury it. It's still a cold case, but yeah, like to your point earlier, when like this Thomas Howard Horn who thinks that it's a hoax, and he also he starts going further later on in his career covering this stuff. He starts looking really hard at this being like an inside job, and that's something I can't comment on coherently, like his reasoning for that, whether it was like notoriety, more funding, I don't know, but it seems counterintuitive why they would want to like if the cops were involved with it, like string it out and make it this kind of big protracted thing without a definitive answer. But yeah, that I was totally unaware of that, the Atlanta child murders till I saw, I think, season 2 of Mindhunters. Have you seen that at all, Chris? That's also a Fincher. I think he's the showrunner, which we had.
I don't watch TV unless it's Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, God. All right. Yeah. Mindhunters is dope. It's Fincher. He's the showrunner. I know we talked about that in an early episode. I don't know what the fuck that means really, but
we're in the really era of the showrunner. Showrunners are known people now.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's got some of his essence on it, but it's just a good show. They touch on in the second season, like the latter half.
What is it in 40-Year-Old Virgin where they're going through that porn box and Paul Rudd's like, that's just a good show.
I think it's Everyone Loves Ray.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's just a good show.
Is it like Boner Jams 02?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't seen any TV show. I've never seen Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Seinfeld, basically anything that is talked about.
I'm kind of that way, but I eventually crumble and I fold, and then I'll come back and I'll forget it was recommended. I'll be like, hey, have you ever heard of this show called Game of Thrones? We talked about that in an early episode. Steve, I think for years, tried to get me. I was like,
yeah, I remember
all
that
fantasy horse shit. And like,
I was listening to that in Sweden and I was like, yeah, I agree with everything. Like, don't fucking watch that. Because I, am idiosyncratic where I can't just like watch part of something. I have to watch all of it. And then there's a very real chance, and Game of Thrones is a perfect example, that it ends up shitty.
Yeah.
Because most people hate the last season of it.
Watch Breaking Bad.
I'm of two minds about it, but yeah, it's definitely one that if you let it, it will sink its hooks into you.
Just watch Breaking Bad. It's good.
I did watch an episode of like season 4 of Better Call Saul this past weekend when other people were in town and wanted to watch it. The only thing I see from that show is like a gif of Walter White fainting. That's what I see the most often.
Or the one of him in like the fucking yellow chemical suit, and he goes up and he boops you like he's just booping the camera.
Not familiar.
The pizza on the roof. You look like you wanted to say something, Steve.
I do. I have a
say something.
It's not a colloquial corner, but it's a phrase colloquial corner. I don't know if you want to hit the intro or if we should just go right into it.
The colloquial corner.
Yeah. So I neglected to bring it up last week because there was a lot of talk of like child sex, rape, kidnapping.
Yeah.
It was a lot of a bummer.
Yeah.
So I saved it for this week. Do you guys know where Corcoran State Prison is in California?
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah, I thought Jim might because it's Central California.
I think you guys talked about it on one of your Coors Light Chronicles, but I had never heard of it.
Yeah, it's like a lower inland Central California. So it's like this strip of shithole in the Central Valley, like just south of like Tulare, if anyone's familiar. It's like smack dab in the middle of Bakersfield and Fresno, outside Kettleman City and Coalinga.
All right, so
it may as well be like Death Valley.
Yeah. Short story, a guy named Jonathan, serving a life sentence, killed 2 child molesters in one day.
Damn.
Both
good for him.
Yeah.
Whole ground rule double.
That's a 2-run bomb. Both child molesters were serving life sentences for aggravated sexual assault of a child under 14. So,
fuck.
So,
well,
he was
good for him.
This man was transferred to a lower security prison, and he warned the officials, like, "Hey, I'm gonna fuck these guys up if you don't keep me away from them." And he took exception that one of the offenders, David Bob, was watching a children's television show, and he could see that.
Oh, that just set him the fuck off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, initially, he saw that. And then a couple days before he killed the shit out of those two guys, they set his security classification down so he could be with the normal people on a pod. And
I wonder how much of that was intentional.
Well, he sent a letter to I guess the warden or whatever, and was like, "This is a bad idea. I don't think you're gonna like it." And then his quote is, "I could not sleep, having not done what every instinct told me I should have done right then and there. So I packed all my things because I knew one way or another the situation would be resolved the following day." So he's prepping. He knows what's about to happen. And then 2 hours before the attack, he told the prison counselor that he needed to be transferred back to high security before I really, in quotes, fuck one of those dudes up. But the counselor scoffed and dismissed him. And then this is another quote. He said, "I was mulling it all over when along came molester number one, and he put his TV right on PBS Kids again."
Wow.
But this time, someone else said something to the effect of, "Is this guy really going to watch this shit right in front of us?" And I recall saying, "I got this." And I picked up, he picked up the cane of a fellow inmate and went to work on him, in his words. So he beat the shit out of that guy who died that day. But we're getting to the colloquial fun. We're getting to the fun part.
Did you say this Jonathan guy was a lifer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in jail for murder. So Watson said he then left the housing pod to find a guard to turn himself in after beating this guy to death. But on the way, he saw a, quote, known child trafficker, and I figured I'd just do everyone a favor. Watson wrote, and here's the
hell yeah.
Here's the phrase that I think you'd love, because he said he just beat this guy to death. He knows he's fucked. He's going to tell the warden. On his way, he sees this other guy who's a known child molester, and he said, "In for a penny, in for a pound." So he beat that guy to death also.
Nice. Fuck yeah.
And that's
Baseball.
Have you guys seen Scared Straight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's this week in echolalia. Whenever Steve said, "I'm in here for murder," every time I hear that, I think of a quote from the 70s Scared Straight, where the dude's like, "I'm in here for murder, kidnapping, robbery, armed robbery, breaking a dude's jaw and breaking his woman's both her goddamn arms."
Damn. That makes me think of the one. Did you ever watch the one? It was like it was like on MTV, the revival.
Oh,
of that,
yeah.
Like 96 or 99.
And Tom Segura does a stand-up about that. And the best part is that I had seen that Scared Straight, and he's not doing a bit at all. He's just verbatim saying what they're doing.
Yeah. Hold my pocket.
The fuck you took.
Yeah, the fuck you took is an echolalia of mine that kind of goes in and out.
Bikes.
I love his description, Segura's, when he's talking about, and like, you know, my wife will be like by a bike shop and she knows what's about to happen and says, "You get one." Like, one of my big ones that I've never let go of is when my wife from Don't Be a Menace, when he's like, "My neck, my back, my neck and my back." If they're like, my wife says anything involving a back or a neck, she's like, "Oh fuck." And I have to, like, my neck and my back. Like,
she put the quarter in the jukebox.
Joe Mace. Yep. Exactly.
My thing from that movie is the fucking you think you R.I.P. Bernie Mac. Rip to a real one.
Yeah, fuck. He's good in Life. I loved him in Life too.
Oh yeah. I watched that like last week. For some reason, I've seen that movie a bunch because I used to watch. It must have been on like Stars or something.
TBS.
And when shit was on Stars, like The Prestige, I think that was your first episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones that was like back to back on Stars. I'm just like, I'm just gonna fucking watch The Prestige for the umpteenth time. Life was one of those.
Have you ever seen Life with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence? Bernie Mac's in it.
Yeah, I think I saw it when I was 13, but I have no memory of it at all.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, no, it fucking rolls. I know you don't like Eddie Murphy, but I really, for whatever reason, my partner had on Nutty Professor one night, and I watched like 20 minutes of it, and I was like, this is fucking dog shit. This is horrible.
I grew up with that, so that one's near and dear. That one's got a young Chappelle in it.
Yeah,
Reggie?
none of which the joke about his character does not make sense to anyone that's watching it in 2023.
What, when he says
Just
Reggie?
like the whole like Def Jam comedy character.
That whole vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, I grew up with that one, so that one's very near and dear to me. The OG, or that was actually a remake, but I'll toss this between the crack of your ass. Dude, that's got some good ones. I think I gave up on I even like Bowfinger shit, but I think I gave up with Eddie Murphy right around Norbit.
Right around Pluto Nash.
Oh, dude. It's unwatchable. It really is. I know my wife likes to she throws around unwatchable where it has no meaning anymore, but Pluto Nash is definitely on a short list of unwatchable films.
It's probably pretty good.
Wait, you're trying to defend Pluto Nash right now?
Maybe I'm thinking of Blank Man or Meteor Man.
No, yeah, Meteor Man is Robert Townsend. That's a much better film. Very similar kind of aesthetic, which I could forgive you for. No, Pluto Nash that was I think 2002. It's real bad. It's like worse than Super Mario Brothers with John Leguizamo and
I mean, that movie's
Bob
fucking
Hoskins.
amazing. I love that movie.
It's good. I'm okay with it. I don't get all the hate that it gets, and I also like that Bob Hoskins in an interview realized like how trashy the film was. So him and John Leguizamo would get trashed at lunchtime on shoots, and there's a scene where he crashes a car. Like he doesn't full on crash, but he like sideswipes a car, and he's like, "Yeah, that wasn't in the script." Because him and Leguizamo were just blitzed after lunch.
Yeah, that's a fucking weird movie. One thing I wanted to say is you guys talk about Twister quotes all the time,
Oh yeah,
but you never talk about he's in it for the money, not the science.
Oh, yeah, that's come up. Oh, yeah.
Or you can't explain it. You can't predict it. And one of the things
He's a
what's the dude's
corporate
name?
kiss butt.
Soju was talking about Twister the ride at Universal Studios.
yeah.
So I've never been there, but there's this old YouTube video. I actually rewatched it today. It's 16 years old and has 58,000 views on it. So not the most viewed video, but it's just like this video of Bill Paxton on Twister the ride. Like he was talking about shit, but someone edited it to like every time he was supposed to say Twister, he said Bill Paxton. So it's so stupid and like the most low hanging fruit of comedy. But I mean, it's 16 years old and I still remember it. It's just like, he's just like, the movie Twister is about one of the most primordial forces on Earth, Bill Paxton. It's like it can take a car and throw it 100 Bill Paxtons across the highway.
That sounds great.
I mean, you guys you're Paxton heads, but do you have any Paxton drops?
Shit, I'm getting called out right now. I don't think I do.
Because you don't even have, you're stewed, buttwad.
Dude, that's one of my favorite lines. Time to pay the fiddler.
Dereliction of duty over here.
I want $238.
State of the badass art.
Are you a big Weird Science fan?
Man, I don't think John Hughes is very good.
That's fine. I'm not a Hughes sycophant, although I'm a big fan of Uncle Buck. I will say that. John Candy, top 3. Have you ever seen Weird Science, Steve? I used to quote his character in that.
It's been a long time.
Where he turns into a fucking piece of shit at the end. He's like, hey.
I just remember him like burying his guns in the backyard.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, he's just like a weird, like,
older military brother.
Graduated high school and is about to go in the military and is fucking has a hard on for it.
One of these ROTC freaks. One of my favorite lines in Weird Al, or not Weird Al, in Weird Science is when the 2 kids like manifest like a fucking like missile or something that ends up coming through the house, and Bill Paxton is talking to Kelly LeBrock, the fucking fantasy woman of your dreams that they manifest, and she says something. She's like, we're dealing with some important shit. This is a fucking missile or whatever. And Bill Paxton says something like, yeah, we'll do this, whatever. And he's like, and I didn't think it was a whale dick, honey. Like, part always fucking kills me.
Good times.
Yeah. Okay.
I wonder if she was ever like, man, I can't believe I used to be married to Steven Seagal.
Yeah. Yikes. Although I will say, guilty pleasure of mine of Seagal's is Glimmer Man. with Keenan Ivory Wayans. We got him to crack, yes. Dude, that's a good one.
I thought you were gonna go what is it? Above like, the Law?
Yeah, or Out for a Kill or something like.
I want to take you to the bank, Senator Trent. To the blood bank.
Oh man. No, yeah, I love the Glimmer Man. I think there's one fight scene in particular. He has like a credit card that's bladed that he slit someone's throat with. Like, you know, those trick like playing cards you can buy like Mall Ninja shit. They're like bladed and like you flick them. He's got like a credit card with a blade.
Nothing personal, kid.
Yeah. Dude, Fire Down Below. Yeah, what a caricature that guy is.
Yeah. Have you ever heard his music? That's something that doesn't get brought up a lot.
It's not bad.
Wait.
It's not bad.
Wait, that's right. Didn't he play it like Gold Country or something? Like his band? Or I have some like deja vu going on. I like from your end, like you were saying something about him years ago, Steve. Him and his band.
I don't know about
play
that.
Like weird. They play like Native American jazz or some shit.
No,
like
I mean
rock.
Probably, but also, I mean, he has music videos where it's just like, I don't even know how to describe it. Just like
it's awesome.
Yeah. Just like his fetishization of like everything Asian.
Yeah, I've seen some of that weird shit where like he tries to do his Hapkido or Aikido shit where he just like rolls people and he's not even moving, and it just
also
like
I mean, speaking
farce.
of Tom Segura bits that are not actually bits, if you've ever seen that show that he was on where Steven Seagal used to hang out with like the New Orleans Police Department.
Oh yeah.
God,
I thought that was like, didn't he get like Shaq is like was deputized as like a consultant, and he like wore a uniform and shit, or he was like an honorary detective, or he was just like it was a show where Steven Seagal was like a glorified ride along.
I mean, I remember an episode where he took all of the other cops to a shooting range, and he was like, "You're gonna shoot a matchstick from 25 yards." And just like all of that like pseudo mystic bullshit that he talks about.
Yeah. God.
And you can tell watching it that they're all just like, okay.
We gotta do this dog and pony show for the cameras. Fuck. All right. You guys got any final thoughts? Do you have any other tidbits or anything that we glossed over regarding Zodiac, Chris or Steve? I don't.
Nope.
No, not on Zodiac.
All right. Anything else you guys want to wrap about before we pack this one up? Any other colloquialisms or anything fun that's happened since the last time we spoke?
I did go to Painting with a Twist, and whilst I was there, I brought up the Elf Christmas special again.
Nice.
So there was that. And I'm wondering how...
Me sober enough. Ow.
Feeling a bit peckish. Is there a KFC around?
Here's my new segment, which is This Week in White People Shit.
Hell yeah.
Is getting drunk and watching YouTube videos together the most white people shit ever?
Shit, I do that sober.
I just had family in town and everyone was drunk and they're just like, hey, let's watch this. Whitney Houston singing the national anthem or fucking
dude,
Linda
that one's
Ronstadt.
good.
Canciones de mi padre.
Oh, okay. Like that kind of shit. Like what we do it for like really funny stuff. Like a big kick we've been on lately is people slipping on ice like for ridiculous periods of time before falling. Dude, some of that shit, I don't know what it is about someone struggling for 15 seconds, just like whoop, 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 just fucking trying to catch. There's one of this kid. I don't know if I shared it with you, Steve. He's like a 20-year-old something. They get out of the car. He's like, yeah, that party was great. And he fucking slips. And he keeps it going for like fucking 30 seconds. And there's a point where he looks at his friend filming him and he just totally sells out. He's pumping like in form running with his arms pumping, his legs.
Chopping.
It's like he's on the treadmill for another 10 seconds before going into this wild, like turns into a whirling dervish and lands on his ass. Something about that is fucking hilarious and it's like contagious. But, I will say the Whitney Houston national anthem that she sang before, I can't remember the Super Bowl. Dick Dog would know this.
I think 92.
Dead to Rights was excellent.
Yeah.
I've even gone so far as watching reactions to like people filmed on camcorder from like 1992 of them reacting to the dude. That was a pretty big. I think I was like in 4th grade when she did that, and it was like proud to be an American as fuck moment. Like
it's iconic.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like there's a need to watch 4 different renditions of the national anthem.
Yeah, that's taking it to another level.
But also, I mean, something you said, you know, like watching funny videos. One of the things, though, you can know everything about someone and still not be able to predict what sort of comedy they're into. That's something I've found in life.
Yeah, for sure.
So sort of what these watching YouTube video sessions turn into is like people are showing me comedians that I don't find to be funny at all.
Yeah, that can be a slog for sure.
And just be like, yeah, men and women are different.
And then you have like a sense of obligation to that person.
Yeah, and then I'm like, well, let's break it up. Let's watch some of Vin Diesel's music videos.
Dude, that guy's a fucking character, weirdo.
Hey, Fast and Furious
I'm
goes
back.
pretty hard.
I touched a nerve there. He's a weird motherfucker.
Pitch Black, thank you very much.
Did not know who he was fucking with. Pitch Black's great. Have you ever seen Pitch Black with Vin Diesel? That was like before he broke out.
No.
Super good.
No.
It's a banger.
Knock around guys.
Well, I can't go too hard on it because it's got Barry Pepper in it, who played Jackson from Saving Private Ryan, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Also in Fast and Furious 2.
Was he?
I think so. Or some other guy that looks exactly like him.
I think I'm gonna have to red pen you on that one. I'm gonna say definitively he was not in that without looking it up.
Okay.
All right. He was great as Roger Maris in 61 opposite Tom Jane.
Yeah.
Who played Mickey Mantle. Oh, I have a fun piece of trivia related to the Zodiac case and more specifically the movie Zodiac, but because this one jumped out because George Lucas, I know, is he's from the Central Valley, and he lived a lot of years in like Marin County, and he went to school at USC, like famously the film school there. So this kind of got a regional interest for him. But I guess he gave an interview to Empire Magazine once stating that the Zodiac murders captured his imagination at the time as a high schooler, and then later on when he attended college at USC. he always felt like Dave Toschi was too harshly judged for how the investigation was handled. And he explained this is why he named a location on Tatooine Toschi Station in honor of the SFPD inspector, which that's pretty intense.
I was supposed to go to Toschi Station to pick up power converters.
Yeah.
That's what Luke says.
Yep. And that jumped out because at the time, I remember growing up, one of my ex stepbrother was a huge fucking Star Wars nerd, and he would quote like really like obscure, or at least to me, that was a pretty obscure line, and he would drop that one. So when I read this, I was like, oh shit, he did name that Toschi Station. So that's pretty neat.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
All right. Cool. Well, yeah, this was kind of definitely a scattershot kind of episode. I don't even know what the fuck we should title this one. Like fucking potpourri, really.
Big
Serial
Red.
Killer. Yeah, Big Red. Big Red and Big Blue.
Baseball.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for coming on again, Chris. Regardless of what we're talking about or covering poorly, it was a good time for sure. If you guys want to reach out to us, hate mail is welcomed, as Steve has indicated previously. You can reach
please
us
do. I was thinking
I never write reviews for podcasts.
Dude, I when I re-listened to that when I was editing, dude, that part got me. Like the
Every
that
time.
whole that review, that person. If I could give this a negative less than 0, I would give it a negative 1,000 about Prisoners. It's like, what? And use the word crud. This piece of crud.
I'm hoping people who don't like the show convene and call themselves anti-waxers.
Wax offers.
Yeah, our battle cry will be wax on. Quick aside too, I guess since it's top of mind, since we just released it this morning. I don't know if you listened to the episode, but have you seen Prisoners before, Chris?
Yeah, we talked about that last time. I was like, it's a good one. I think Steve will like it, and Steve liked it.
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty ham-boned at that point, so that makes sense. Yeah, it was a winner all the way around. So right on. Yeah, hate mail, wax@waxingtheporpoise.com. That's where to send it. And I think I added it in post in the previous episode, but I also just wanted to recall we were on A Cut Above, Steve and I, for Identity from 2003. That they released that this past Monday, and that's their most recent episode. So check them out. They do a lot of horror centric, obviously, but that was a fun one to talk about, even though we didn't. I think it seemed across the board kind of lukewarm on it, but thank you again.
Yeah, it was fun.
Word. Yeah, and when I was talking to Thon from Ghoulish University, remember when he was talking about, he recommended The Raid 1 and 2, like as it being like fucking like top tier, like top 3 dope, super dope action movie, like that's super underseen. I think it's foreign. I'm sure. Well, maybe you've seen it, Chris. Do you have any insight? Can you add to that at all, or vouch for The Raid 1 or 2?
Yeah, I can vouch for The Raid, the first one. It's Steve, if you've ever seen Fury Road or the Judge Dredd remake, it's pretty similar to those, where it's just straight action.
Like, no. I haven't.
Something in a similar vein that I think is truly underrated is The Protector with Tony Jaa.
Dude, fuck yeah. Although I've never seen that. I've seen Ong Bak.
I've seen Ong Bak. Yeah.
The Protector.
Tony Jaa.
It's good times.
Okay, I'll have to check it out, because yeah, I'm a believer after watching Ong Bak. That shit was dope. When he gets the bones, he puts them on his elbows and he fucking slices that dude
He
up.
also does that in The Protector.
Yes, sold. Sweet. So yeah, we might have to get something together with them to check out The Raid. I've heard both of them it's like a weird franchise in that the first and second are like neck and neck in terms of like quality and how like dope badass action overall they are, and they're almost like interchangeable. Like you don't have to watch one to get or enjoy the second, or vice versa. So yeah, that might be in the future too, cooking up. But I think next week we're riding solo dolo. Me and Steve, we're going to be reviewing Jennifer 8, which is not a fucking female android
bicentennial man.
No, Jesus Christ. No, yeah, it's like a gritty, like just like an early 90s crime, like whodunit with Lance Henriksen, Andy Garcia, Uma Thurman. It's good. And the aforementioned John Malkovich, who has a really good role in it, albeit pretty short. But yeah, so we'll be talking about that next week. I think right now it's relatively available. I think the last I checked it was on HBO Max. I could be wrong. Let me double check this. Jennifer 8. Yep, it's on HBO Max, Showtime, and DirecTV to stream right now. So yeah, check out Jennifer 8. You can also reach out to us on Instagram is @waxingtheporpoise. Twitter is @waxingtheporp. So you can send hate mail there as well if you like. Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks again, Chris, for coming on, humoring us. We appreciate you. Always a great time.
Go to bed, you sons of bitches.
Good times.